Thank you so much. And it was so wonderful to sing children out of the service today. Our growing edges, whether they're Wanda's garden and the hope and the risks that it took to bring that garden into bloom, or other spaces. In our ecosystems, there is this space that's called an edge habitat. And I really enjoy and value learning from nature and the things that nature teaches us. And these edge habitats are a habitat that exists between two habitats, and there's a tension between those habitats. And so they create something unique, something that's all their own. An example of that is a wetland. You know, a wetland is that area that's between the dry land and the lake or an ocean. Sometimes we call those wetland swamps. And there's a popular expression that gets used of, oh, we need to drain the swamp. Thinking about the swamp as being something that's undesirable or filled with undesirable things. And it comes out of our history in which we did that. We, as a people, looked at swamps, looked at wetlands, and said, oh, we don't want that, so we filled them in or removed them and built on top of them. So roughly 57% of the cities in the world have been built on areas that were wetlands, that were swamps. And we've got about half of them that are left. But what we've learned since then is how important they are. That these edge areas, these wetlands, help prevent flooding. They are a very important part of preventing climate change because they store carbon. So we're learning, we're relearning that these areas that we call edge habitats, this blend, this tension, is an important part of our own health and resilience. I think there's some wisdom in that, in thinking about ourselves and in our congregations, that these things that we sometimes think of as growing edges, that kind of uncomfortable space where we're not quite there yet, or we can see something different, and we can see where we've been, and we're in kind of that in-between space in our lives and our growth, can feel uncomfortable. And so there's this drive to like, well, let's move past this. We forget to value the importance of this piece, this time, this space of being in between, this space of our growing edge as having its own value, of having its own beauty, of being a thing that adds to our growth and our resilience. There's a couple things that I think can help with that help us with that value of valuing these in-between spaces, valuing these growing edges. One is paying attention to our own expectation of things being perfect, letting go of perfectionism and stepping back and taking that time to appreciate the perfect imperfection, the beauty of what is, the strengths that are there in the moment, the beauty that's in that uniqueness, and just the inherent worth and dignity, right? We often talk about our faith has that phrase of the inherent worth and dignity of each person, and that includes ourselves. So our faith can help us move into that space of appreciation. Letting go sometimes of that sense of urgency that can take hold of us, that sense of like it just all has to happen now, or I've got to get past this moment and get to that thing, whatever it is, that sense of I've just got to get it all done. And that stepping back and remembering again, this moment, this space, this time is what we have, and it's valuable and it's important. And we can move through it if we need to move through it at all, at a steady space. Sometimes we do need to move through it, but we can move through it steadily, with some patience, with recognizing that sometimes things take longer than what we expected, and that's okay. Being okay with discomfort. Sometimes our own fear of conflict can be one of those things that wants us to move past that growing edge. And not that we should go looking for ways to, deliberately make somebody uncomfortable, but knowing that we have it within us to have difficult conversations, that we can face the hard things, that we can have both safe space and brave space. Those aren't necessarily always either-or things. That willingness to face and talk about hard issues, and that we don't have to do that alone. And one that was kind of implied in some of what I was talking about, this getting caught into this either-or kind of thinking. It's either this or it's that. It's this or it's that. And one of the things that our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to do is to engage complexity. Even our name is complex when you think about it, right? And it holds so many different elements and has such a rich history behind it that we can hold things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to coexist, and yet they're able to. We see this each week in one of the parts of our service that's coming forward. We take our time to share joys and concerns. And every week we're reminded that in our community and in other UU communities, there are joys and concerns. And that one of them existing doesn't stop the other from existing. We can hold them both. And sometimes the same person will say, I have a joy and I have a concern. Because sometimes we hold both those things in our lives. And sometimes we'll say, this is both a joy and a concern. The same thing holds both those elements. Having a new minister is both a joy and a concern, right? Having a new sibling congregation is both a joy and a concern. Article 2 is a joy and a concern. This building is a joy and a concern. And we can hold the complexity of those things. And so I want to take a moment to share a reading from a person who I admire and who some of you are going to get to know at least through video and coursework. Sir Alex Capitan is one of the co-founders of the Transforming Hearts Collective, and he's one of the co-authors. And I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong gender. Let me back up for a moment for Alex, because Alex uses Z/per pronouns, which are a non-binary pronoun. And so my error. It's a good thing I started with talking about imperfection. So Alex goes by Zer, which is the replacement of either using, rather than using Mr. or Ms. or Miss. It's a thank you. Yes, neopronouns. So this non-binary. And so Alex is, by video, one of the instructors for a course that we will be offering, and there will be information coming out about that soon in our newsletter, this course that's called Trans Inclusion in Congregations. And Alex wrote this meditation that's called A Meditation on Opposites. Spirit of the universe, life force that flows through all beings, power beyond our knowing, we ask you to help us see beyond our dependence on opposites, to transcend our desire to know who is like us and who is not. Open us to the knowledge that in this room there are complexities and diversities of identities beyond black and white, old and young, woman and man, poor and rich, uneducated and educated, disabled and able-bodied, gay and straight, ill and healthy, wrong and right, broken and whole. In this room, there are people who embody juxtaposition, who can tell stories written on their bodies about both and neither, who carry intimate pieces of truth that there are no such thing as opposites. Spirit of many names and of no name at all, help us find release from our belief that all things must be either or, this belief that walls us off from one another, ensnaring us in a battle of same versus different. Help us to open our minds, to deeply listen, and to truly know one another, finally glimpsing the kaleidoscope beauty of the divine. I opened with talking a little bit about ecotone, these growing edges, these growing spaces, these edge habitats. That term ecotone comes from the Greek, and it's a combination of ecology plus tone. Tone is tension. Ecology, many of you know, has the root word that comes from home, and it literally means knowledge of home. So I want to take a moment to invite Dave Dreyer here, who is one of the members of our congregation with a deep knowledge of home. It's been my joy these last 2 days. We've had this thing called a new minister startup, where we spent a great deal of time together Friday evening, spent all day together yesterday, and Dave was there throughout and really enjoyed hearing the things that he shared from his heart and from his experience. So Dave, if you would like to share with us.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Dave Dreyer, and I was honored to be asked by why I pledge to the Tree of Life, and I'd like to share that with you. During the last century, I was on the church board, okay? And we were trying to come up with a budget, and it was extremely frustrating because there were a lot of people that hadn't pledged. How can you come up with a budget when you don't know what it is? And so for years, I would pledge so that the board could do its job. And I now think of my pledge as more of an investment. Now, whenever we think of an investment, we think we're going to get more out of it than we put into it. And I know I personally have gotten far more out of this church than I have put into it, okay? I think of my investment as an investment in me, an investment in you, an investment in our youth that we had here, and even people, an investment in people that haven't even walked in our door yet, because I know that they're going to come. And I hope that they see the investments that we have made and that they get that feeling too. Now, I cannot fully fund our church budget, and you can't, but working together, we can and we will get this done, okay? Please consider how important a pledge is, and consider it an investment in all the areas that I've talked about. Thank you.